The ballroom pulsed with music and polished shoes striking marble, yet all the billionaire could hear was the thud of his own rage. His face set like stone, he turned toward the exit, his tailored suit cutting through the glittering crowd as whispers followed him. He had come to close the deal of a lifetime, but one careless slight, one careless word had poisoned the air and left him ready to walk away. Forever, servants froze as he passed the columns. Waiters lowered their trays, not daring to move. His black eyes carried a storm no one wished to step into. The world knew him as a man who never looked back once his decision was made. A deal broken was a bridge burned. He reached for the grand doors, pushing them open as cold desert air spilled into the hall. Then it came. A voice, soft yet steady words, spoken in flawless native Arabic, cutting through the noise like a blade of light. He stopped mid-step, the hand on the brass handle, tightening, his shoulders locked, his head turned just slightly, and for the first time in years, his guarded expression cracked. He faced her. The young woman stood near the banquet table, her simple dress out of place among glittering gowns, her chin lifted, her dark eyes refusing to bow. She had been silent all evening, moving in the background, unseen, unheard. But now her tongue carried the weight of centuries, the words his mother once whispered at dawn, the words he had not heard in years, spoken with the fire of truth. Gasps rippled through the guests. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others leaned forward, hungry for the scene. No one dared interrupt, not when a billionaire known for his silence, for his vengeance, stood frozen by the voice of a maid, a woman no one thought mattered. His lips parted, but no words came. His chest rose and fell once, twice, like a man pulled suddenly from drowning. He had power, he had gold, he had a kingdom in his hands, but in that moment he knew he had met the one thing he could not command, a voice that spoke to the deepest part of who he was. And as the hall held its breath, the furious billionaire lowered his hand from the door, turned fully to face her, and let the storm inside him shift towards something he had not felt in a very long time. His steps echoed as he moved. Back into the ballroom, the guests parting in silence like the sea before a storm. His dark eyes never left her face. The maid, no, not just a maid, stood rooted to the marble floor, her hands trembling slightly at her sides, though her chin did
"Not falter, what did you say?" he demanded in Arabic, his voice low like distant thunder. The crowd exchanged confused glances, none of them understanding the tongue, only sensing its weight. She swallowed once, then repeated the words, slower, softer. They
were not a challenge but a reminder, a phrase his mother used when he was a boy, a blessing carried through generations. You cannot walk away from truth. She said, her accent pure, her tone unshaken. The air shifted. He felt the heat in his throat, the sting behind his eyes, though he would never let them see it. He had buried that language deep beneath business deals and boardrooms, choosing English, French, whatever served his empire. But here, in a room of power brokers and heirs, this woman had cut him open with syllables older than his fortune. "Why do you speak it?" he asked again, this time almost a whisper. She held her breath for a moment, then answered, "Because it is mine, and I do not trade my tongue for anyone, not even for men like you." Gasps again rippled across the hall. A servant daring to stand tall before the richest man in the room. His jaw clenched, not from fury, but from the unfamiliar twist in his chest, the memory of his mother's hands, the desert wind carrying prayer, the taste.
Of dates by a small fire, all of it came back in a rush. He had not expected it from her, not from this night, not from this place. The silence grew unbearable. A rival executive smirked clearly, expecting an explosion, a dismissal. But instead, the billionaire
Lifted his chin and spoke again in Arabic, this time gently. If that is true, then you are the only honest voice here. Her eyes widened. The crowd stirred, unable to follow the exchange, but feeling the shift. The man who minutes ago had been fire and fury now stood softened, stilled, anchored by a maid's courage and her tongue of home, and for the first time that night he knew he would not be leaving, at least not without knowing her name. The music had faltered into uneasy strings, the violinists bow, quivering over notes, unsure whether to play or stop. The billionaire's gaze stayed locked on her, while whispers coiled like smoke between jeweled guests. He stepped closer, slow, deliberate, his polished shoes striking the marble. Each step carried the weight of a man who was used to being obeyed. And yet tonight, he was the one searching. "What is your name?" he asked again in Arabic. Softer than before, the question rolled heavy in the air. Few understood it, but all knew its gravity. She hesitated. The servants along the wall stiffened their eyes, darting, warning her not to speak, but her lips parted anyway. "My name is Layla." She said the syllables warm yet fragile like glass. She tilted her chin higher, as if daring him to make a mockery of it. "Layla," he repeated, tasting the name as though it was a word he had long forgotten. His voice cracked on the edges, not with weakness, but with something none of them had heard from him in years' memory. The name tugged at him, pulling him away from the ballroom into a desert night where his mother had once sung to him the same name in an old lullaby. He blinked once, twice, and the walls of pride around him shifted. The crowd had begun to stir louder this time. Someone scoffed in French. A voice in English murmured, "She's nothing, just a maid." Why is he listening? Rival CEOs exchanged looks, one smirking as if the empire was slipping from the billionaire's grip, but the man ignored them all. He reached into the inner pocket of his tailored suit and pulled out a heavy gold coin. The room stilled as he held it, not toward his business partners, not toward the gathering of heirs, but toward her. The coin shimmered under the chandelier light, engraved with ancient script, the symbol of his family crest, a mark not shared, not gifted, not given to anyone outside his bloodline. Yet now it rested in his open palm before a maid. "Do you recognize this?" he asked. She looked down at it, her breath catching the crest, the script. She knew it. She whispered, "Yes, it is the same mark carved into the old prayer stone in my grandmother's village." His chest heaved. The edges of his control were slipping. For years he thought that stone was lost with the desert raids, and now a maid, a servant, stood before him, speaking his tongue, carrying pieces of his history that even he had abandoned. The crowd pressed closer, sensing a revelation, though still blind to its meaning. He closed his hand over the coin, his knuckles white. Then he said something.
no one expected. "Come with me now." The murmurs rose to shouts. The rival slammed his glass down, protesting, "This is madness. She is nothing. A servant does not belong in this room." The billionaire turned his gaze, cold as steel, toward the man and answered,
In English this time. For the first time tonight, someone spoke truth, and it was not you. He extended his hand to her, waiting, not commanding, not demanding. Layla's breath trembled her eyes, shifting between the outstretched hand and the furious eyes
of those around her. Then she stepped forward. Her small hand slid into his, and the hall fell into stunned silence.
The hall erupted like thunder. The guests surged forward, a storm of jeweled gowns and polished shoes, outrage hissing from every corner. He had chosen her a maid over them. His empire, they whispered, was built on iron and fear. Yet here he was breaking its walls with a single gesture. Layla's fingers trembled in his, but he tightened his hold, steady, unyielding. He led her through the crowd, every step defying the storm. Around them whispers turned to accusations. Some shouted he had gone mad. Some demanded security drag. Her out-rival partners smirked, seeing a fracture they could exploit. The billionaire ignored them. He walked until the doors of the ballroom closed behind him. The heavy wood muted the noise but not the danger. He led her down a quiet corridor lined with ancient tapestries, their colors faded yet proud. His stride slowed, and finally he stopped his back against the stone wall. His eyes searched hers as though fighting a war within himself. "Do you know what you've done?"
Layla, he said. His voice shook, not with anger, but something deeper. You spoke a tongue none here dared. You named what no one remembered. She bit her lip, gathering courage. I only spoke truth, she whispered. They mock you because they cannot hear it.
But I know the words. I know them because they belong to my blood too. His jaw clenched, his breath ragged as if the weight of years pressed against his chest. He opened his hand, revealing the coin again. He traced the crest with his thumb. "Do you know what this means?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "My grandmother used to tell me stories. She said the coin belonged to men who forgot their homes, but not their names." His throat tightened. He had buried that same story long ago, believing it lost with the desert winds, and now it returned from the lips of a maid. But footsteps echoed down the corridor, sharp, fast. Security guards stormed forward, flanking a rival CEO. His eyes glittered with venom. He pointed at Layla. "That girl is no maid, she is a liar." He sneered. "She will destroy you and all of us if you trust her." The billionaire stepped in front of her, his frame towering. The rivals snarled. Orders were given, remove her now. The guards hesitated. Their eyes darted between the billionaire and the rival, two powers colliding, one with wealth, the other with blood. Then the billionaire's voice cut through like steel. "You touch her, and you will answer to me." The air thickened as silence fell. His words carried not threat, but promise. Layla clutched, the coin now resting in her hand, feeling its weight real and undeniable. She looked up at him and whispered in Arabic, "Old truths never die, they only wait for someone to speak them." His eyes burned at her words. He turned back to the rival, and for the first time his tone was not prideful, but raw. "I thought I buried the past, but it stands before me now in her. If you call her a liar, then you call me the same." The rival faltered. His smirk faded, his grip on the guards weakened. But the storm was not gone, only brewing, waiting for the next strike. The corridor shook with tension as more voices spilled in. The rival's allies came fast, polished shoes clicking against marble faces, sharp with greed. They surrounded him, a circle of power, pressing inward. Layla's back touched the wall, but his hand still shielded her. "You are destroying yourself," one man growled. "Your empire rests on silence, not on forgotten tongues. Walk away from her before everything crumbles. The billionaire's chest heaved. His eyes burned with conflict. He had built towers from dust-signed contracts worth more than kingdoms, and yet none of it weighed as heavy as the coin in Layla's hand. He saw in her eyes not rebellion, but reflection, his own stories spoken back. To him, Layla's voice broke through the noise, soft yet cutting like wind through the dunes. You hide who you are because they told you to, but blood never forget. It called you tonight, and you answered whether you wanted to or not. His pulse thundered. His gaze fell on the rival, who now smirked again, sensing hesitation. A king without memory is no king, he sneered. The girl is nothing more than a servant trying to weave herself into gold. The billionaire's hand trembled. He reached for the coin. Again its weight hot against his skin. His mind flashed with his father's silence, his grandfather's secrets, the desert songs that had never been sung in these halls. Then he stepped forward, leaving Layla behind. His voice roared, filling the corridor.
I am not ashamed of where I come from, and I will not let you bury what belongs to me and my people. The circle broke, gasps erupting like fire. The rivals staggered, eyes wide as if struck. The guards lowered their arms, uncertainty clouding their faces.
They had never heard him speak like this, never seen him burn with truth instead of pride. Layla's knees nearly buckled, her chest swelled with a mix of fear and awe. He had chosen words over silence, blood over empire, but the rival was not finished. His lips curled into a smile sharp as a blade. Then you have declared war, he spat, and war demands blood. At his signal, a man stepped from the shadows. His hand rested on the cold steel of a hidden weapon. The hall's breath froze. Layla's gasp cut. Through the air, her voice cracked with desperation. Stop this! He has chosen truth, not war. Do not let history repeat itself. The billionaire moved without thought. His arms swept her behind him. His eyes never left the rival. His chest rose, steady no. Fear only resolve if war is what you bring. Then let it fall on me, not her. The weapon lifted, the guards froze. The rival's laughter echoed dark and hollow, and then the gunmetal gleam caught the light, and the rival's man raised his arm, but in the heartbeat, before the shot cracked through the hall, the billionaire surged forward like a storm. He struck the man's wrist, sending the weapon clattering across marble stone. His guards, startled, finally jolted from obedience, swarmed to restrain. The would-be assassin, the rival's smirk collapsed. He stumbled backward, his face paling, as his own circle dissolved like sand, swept by desert winds. The billionaire stood tall, his chest heaving, his voice rolling like thunder. You dare bring death into my house. You dare chain my people's tongue and mock our blood. No more. Silence gripped the air. His guards looked at one another, waiting, watching. Then, one by one, they bowed heads, lowering in quiet allegiance. They had followed his empire of glass, but now they bent to the man of flesh and fire who claimed his truth at last. The rival tried to flee, but Layla stepped forward, her hand rising, not in violence, but in defiance. The coin glimmered between her fingers. She pressed it into the billionaire's palm and whispered softly, so only he could hear, "Hold it and remember, you are not their shadow." Strength surged through him. He faced the rival, eyes ablaze. "Leave and never return," he commanded. "Your war is over before it begins. My blood will not be silenced, and my people will not be sold." The rival froze, trembling rage burning in his veins, but the weight of the room was against him. He spat curses in a foreign tongue, but the guards shoved him toward the doors. His echo faded into nothing. Then it was only the billionaire and Layla. The marble beneath them seemed to breathe the night air, finally free. He turned to her, his gaze softer than it had ever been. I spent years buying the world's respect, yet a maid's daughter gave
Me, the only gift that mattered. You gave me myself. Her throat tightened with unshed tears. She wanted to bow her head, but his hand rose, lifting her chin. Their eyes locked, fire meeting fire. For the first time he did not see a servant. He saw the woman
who had spoken truth into his silence and shattered his chains. The hall that once echoed with hollow deals now pulsed with something alive, something real. He leaned closer, his voice hushed. If I build anew, will you stand with me, not as shadow, but as equal? Layla's lips parted, a tremor of disbelief rushing through her. Then she nodded, her voice barely more than a breath. Yes, the billionaire closed his eyes for a moment, letting the weight of centuries lift from his shoulders. When he opened them again, he was no longer a man bound by silence, but one reborn by the courage of a woman who refused to bow. And the empire that rose after that night was no longer carved from glass, but from truth and fire, carried by two voices instead of one.